Hi, this is Randy, and welcome to Furniture Shuffle. For my first project, I found this cute little mid-century modern nightstand at the thrift store. It has plenty of issues, but great bones. It's got a little gouge there in the top, some nicks, dings, plenty of scratches. Looks like maybe a dog took a nibble out of the corner there. But the worst part is you can see by this browning, it was obviously in a smoker's home for many, many years. I didn't realize how bad it was until I got it home into my garage and it just stunk. But we'll get that taken care of. The hardware is not in the best shape, but overall I think it's going to be a fun project, so let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is remove the drawers so I can give it a thorough vacuuming on the inside. I'm going to go ahead and flip this guy on its back just so I can get the underside of it. Sometimes there's creepy crawlies that are hanging out under there, and sometimes the bottoms tend to get overlooked. While vacuuming the underside, I noticed that this little board was loose here, so we will get that taken care of in just a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and remove the hardware from the drawers here. I'm going to be using just some regular dishwashing liquid with a little water and lots of elbow grease. So I'm just going to take a rag and wipe down the whole piece. I'm not too concerned about the drawers here because I'm going to be stripping those anyway. But the main cabinet, I want to scrub at really well because I want to get as much of that smell and grime off as possible. And as you can see, it is pretty dirty. I'm going to go ahead now and take off the braces that are holding that loose board on the bottom front off. I will be adding these back on later, but I will be replacing the screws because they are all rusty. I'm grabbing some clamps here to use to clamp that board back on after I get it glued. I'm using plenty of wood glue just to make sure that it is as secure as possible. I am putting that board back in place. I will clamp it so it stays together and wipe off any excess glue. So now I'm going to take my 2.5-inch carbide scraper and get off as much of that finish on just the drawers as possible because I will be staining those. The top drawer was a little trickier because of that curve in it, so I just got down on the ground and braced it with my feet. Unfortunately, I lost the footage of me initially sanding the drawers with 120 grit sandpaper because the day that I did that, it was 114 degrees and my camera overheated. But this is what they look like after that initial sanding. You can see I blew through the veneer on that upper left-hand corner there, but I will show you how to fix that. I'm taking my rotary sander here and just using 120 grit sandpaper just to give the whole base of the cabinet a good scuff sand, just so the paint has a nice surface to adhere to and to get rid of any surface dings and scratches. And the same here with that detail around that pull on that top drawer. The final sanding on the drawers is with 220 grit sandpaper, and that'll give me a nice smooth surface on those drawers. I'm just taking a wet rag here and going over the whole base cabinet and the drawers just to remove any loose sawdust that still happens to be on there. And you can kind of see there's quite a bit left on there. I'm gonna use Bondo to fill that gouge that was in the top of the piece there. I'm using Bondo as opposed to a general wood filler because Bondo is much stronger. So I'm just gonna take a little bit with my finger, put it on a scrap piece of paper. You can use anything. Takeout containers work really well for that. And then you wanna take the hardener, squirt a little bit of that on there, and then mix it up until the color is consistent. And you have to work pretty quickly because it hardens pretty fast. I'm going to be using these Varathane repair markers to take care of that little section of veneer that I blew out. So you just want to take it and wipe it on there, any little portion that happens to be burnt out there. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a piece of sandpaper. It goes on pretty dark, so I'm just going to buff that color back a little bit. And once it's done, once it's stained, you won't even be able to tell it was there. I wanted a nice contrast between the drawers and the base of the cabinet, so I decided to use this Varathane English Chestnut. It's a nice dark color that will really contrast with the base of the cabinet. So I'm just using cotton cloth and wiping it on with nice even strokes, just making sure that I don't put on too much and just going over it just to wipe off any excess. I'm not concerned about getting any on that centerpiece just because I will be painting that later anyway. The Bondo has now hardened, so I'm going to go ahead and sand that flush. I'm using my paint sprayer to apply a layer of Kills primer. That'll give the paint something to adhere to and hopefully help out with that cigarette smell. I'm applying a top coat of polyurethane onto the drawers only, and I'm going to be using a couple techniques that work for me here in the heat. First one here is I am spraying the brush with water, which will keep the polyurethane from drying too quickly, creating streaks and leaving bubbles. And so you just want to apply it and then gently wipe over it and then leave it alone. Don't mess with it while it dries. The next technique I'm going to use is spraying water directly to the surface of the drawer. I like to use this one if the area is a little larger that I'm working on. Either one work really well, but again, you just want to spread the poly on, working in small sections. Fortunately, the drawers aren't that huge. And then you want to take your brush and drag it over it to get out any bubbles and streaks, and then leave it alone. If you mess with it after it starts to dry, you're gonna have issues. I ended up putting on 3 coats each of poly on both drawers. I chose a very light paint color, and I ended up doing 3 coats. I just wanted something that would contrast with those drawers really nice. In between each coat, I took a 320 grit sanding sponge and gave it a good wipe down just to get rid of any dust that may have been deposited on while the paint was drying. And now I'm just putting primer on that detail that was on the top drawer. While that primer dries, I'm going to take some Barkeeper's Friend and some super fine steel wool and scrub the hardware to hopefully get all of that grime off of it. For the first coat of paint on that detail, I'm going to use this little brush just so I can get into all of those nooks and crannies. For the last 2 coats, I switched back to my round brush just so I could get a nice smooth finish on that detail. I'm removing the tape while that last coat is still wet, just so I get nice, clean, crisp lines. And also, you can see a sneak peek of my next project in the background there. I wasn't very happy with how the hardware cleaned up, so I decided to go ahead and spray paint them. I also applied a clear coat just for some extra protection. I decided to apply a sealing wax to the base cabinet. I just like how it has a softer look as opposed to urethane. So I'm just applying it here with a circular motion just to make sure I get good coverage over the whole piece. I'm applying Howard's Feed and Wax to both the insides and outsides of the drawers. What this is going to do is it's going to rehydrate that wood and give it a nice glow. And also, because the Howard's Feed and Wax is scented with orange, it's going to help with the odor as well. I'm going back now and getting rid of any excess wax and buffing it out. Time to reattach the hardware and then the big reveal. This nightstand went from stinky and shabby to updated and modern. If you enjoyed this project, be sure to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.